Well, that was good, wasn't it? Did you still enjoy listening to Madness songs?
I do, actually, you know. I mean, I prefer performing it than listening to it.
Well, I was at the gig on
Yeah.
Sunday night, and
Yeah.
it was just miraculous. Yeah.
Hello.
You could probably hear me anyway. You just sat
I
across
can
the
hear you,
room.
actually. Oh, yeah, hello.
Mark, nice to meet you.
Hi, Mark.
Chaz Smash is here. And,
What a name, eh?
It was such a... You do not like being called that?
It's sort of funny as you get older, you know, the Smash bit. Mr. Smash sounds all right. Chaz Smash. I don't know, I remember being in a restaurant once years ago and I'd written a graffiti, you know, early days. And I'd written Chaz Smash and someone wrote, is a potato, you know, after smashed potatoes.
Oh, right,
but
yeah.
anyway, back to the gig.
Oh, I quite like that. Well, all I was going to say, and this is why you said back to the gig, was what a fantastic night it was.
It's not bad for a bunch of old lags, is it?
But you didn't seem that old.
It doesn't
Compared
feel
with
that
the
old.
audience.
I think. Do you know what the audience are a phenomenon in themselves? I think, you know, a lot of my guests were saying it's just as interesting looking at the audience. You know,
What's the average age, do you reckon?
probably 94. Probably 94, I think. No. I don't know. I mean, there's definitely a lot of blokes who must have been into us the first time
Yeah,
round.
there's a
Who are
lot of
now
skinheads
coercing
with
their kids.
There's a lot of skinheads with slightly grown out hair, but it's still hanging on to it.
But I think,
You know when you're going bald, but you're hanging on to being a skinhead. There's that sort of.
Yeah.
There was a lot of
Yeah, I
that.
can
But
imagine.
it was lovely.
It comes to a point where it's dignified, though, don't you think? Rather than being bald, just shaving it all off. Do you know what I mean? Crops sort of. The older man, you can look Swedish, get Swedish glasses.
If you like, you
No?
probably had lights in your eyes. You probably couldn't
probably
see the
did,
audience.
I probably
Dignity wasn't necessarily the main thing on their mind as they were
No.
jumping up and down tonight back to Cairo.
Exactly.
They probably weren't thinking, I wonder if I really appear like Cary Grant to the ladies in the audience.
Did you see it from the outset, from the beginning?
Yes.
I mean, I just sort of, my wife was saying, and some friends were saying, that the rush, do you know what I mean, of expectancy and all that in the audience. And I mean, it is a brilliant audience we have, I must say, you know.
It really
without sounding, you know.
Walked into the bar and there was a bloke stood there with the pith helmet from the Night Back to Cairo video.
Yeah.
And I just thought, yeah, this is going to be a good night. and went and sat in my seat, and it was at the London Arena, which is never. I've been to quite a few gigs there. I've never enjoyed one before. This was the first time I've enjoyed one. And looking across the crowd, and you see lots of blokes in fezzes, red fezzes, and all of this sort of thing. And it was like, yeah, people are dressing up to come and see this band.
If you put those, if you've got those 12,500 blokes and stuck them somewhere else, people probably get quite worried. Do you know what I mean?
You know what? There was a problem with the sound, and I was worried. do you remember on the?
Yeah,
of course
yeah.
you remember. But someone poured a load of beer. This is the dignity at a Madness gig. Someone poured a load of beer down the mixing desk, which isn't good for electronics.
Which is not
generally.
good. It's not good. We're sort of.
So was it
singing
an
along-
accident or was it?
It's an accident.
I'm sure it was an accident.
I think
Yeah.
he's
Bit of a
really... our sound man seems to be going through an unlucky phase. 3 times he had someone vomit on him at one gig. I think we're just going to have to put a canopy on him. But anyway, let's move on from that.
But there was I don't know, 8 or 10 minutes, or maybe
Yeah.
not even that long.
Probably not that long. It seems longer live.
Yeah. Well, just because I suddenly felt I've never been to a football match, and I suddenly thought this is all going to go off.
Yeah.
Because no one was sure. I'm sure you weren't sure whether the gig was going to continue or not.
We didn't know what to do, really. I mean, the thing is, they carry spare modules, so you hope that, you know, if a desk has got 24 channels, hopefully 23, just channel 23 is gone, and they're going to just pull it out and put
Or
another
it could
one
have
in.
been that the electrics were deliberately slipped by someone in connection with a Far East betting syndicate.
It's probable.
Who'd had a bet that the gig would be exactly as it was.
Now, there's
at
a
that time.
thought. There's a thought.
But honestly, as you sat in a crowd of how many 12,000 you say?
12 and a half. I mean, what...
Ex-skinheads.
what-
who were getting a little bit angry by things, and I thought, I wonder what's the quickest way. I really was getting a bit. Antsy
we
about
just
things.
finished Sun in the Rain, actually, haven't we?
Yes.
We were just... I can't remember what we were going to go into. But, yeah, there you go. The perils of playing live.
But nonetheless, it was.
That's always been good-natured, isn't it? Did it
I know,
ever get
it's-
kick off?
I know it was,
It's
but
back
you
in the-
knew that for another 5 minutes, any gig.
But I mean, even
that
back then,
many
I suppose
people.
it was a little bit airy, wasn't it?
It's not a bit hairy. It's just you've lost the momentum,
Yeah.
and you know you've got the audience in that palm of your hand, and you want to nurture them. You know, so it really throws you. You know,
and also
you know.
people have looked forward to it for a long time.
Exactly.
And it's just before Christmas, and suddenly it's going to. Oh, we've got to go home now.
You know.
It was that sort of attitude, you know.
There is a real challenge in how you deal with it, but there's not a lot you can do if you can't communicate to them.
But you did the right thing. You walked off stage in your tails between your legs until it was sorted out.
Exactly. You've got to. What else can you do?
no, absolutely
It's
right.
more
But-
frustrating for them. What's he saying?
But magnificent, mate. I mean, sure, you've seen Madness many times,
Yeah.
but just seeing the whole crowd diving up and down to, I think, was it One Step Beyond you started with? I can't remember.
We start one step beyond. We always do, except this time I recorded it and we put, we film my face and stuck that up large on the screen and all that sort of carry on. Makes it easier for me, mate. You know? But I think what happens, about the energy of the shows, I think it's all muscle memory. I mean, I think I just slept for 2 days after the tour, you know. It's just all muscle memory. The old body's going, but the muscles are saying, no, you can't do this. You haven't trained at all for this tour. You silly old bugger. You know what I mean?
You're the dancer.
I know, isn't that weird?
It is weird, because he can play every instrument in the world, but started out as the dancer.
Started out as the dancer. I tell you what, if I ever lose my voice, I think, don't worry about it. I started out off as the dancer who wasn't singing, so just carry on, son. You know.
Yeah, but you weren't exactly flying down to Rio, were you? It's not a dance that you can fit into many other.
No, it's not. But I mean, I have to admit, I was concentrating more on the harmonies. That, you know, the older you get. Should I keep saying that? The more sensible you get, and let's say sensible, the more time you spend on making it a good show. You know, orally. Does that mean listening wise? Yeah.
Yeah.
Darling.
Anyway,
Right.
Let's hear another track. This is one. I think you co-wrote this one. Tomorrow's Just Another Day.
I wrote that one. Yeah, that's about my life, and it's still as relevant today as it was when I wrote it around.
Isn't it
19.
an amazing story? Started out as the band's dancer, and I presume just mate who was at a lot of gigs and whatever. Ends up writing loads of the greatest songs.
I was actually the bass player originally.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
And they made you a dancer?
Well, no, I left the band because Barzo wouldn't give me a lift home to Moswell Hill from Highgate, and he was so cheap in those days. You know, it was like you had to chip in 20p for petrol. He was, I mean, he's still frugal, shall we say. Tight in the old days, frugal now. But, yeah, he didn't give me a lift one home. And you know, when you're 16, 17, it's like, sod you. You know what I mean? I'm out of the band. So I was out of the band for a while, and they got another bass player, which was probably a good idea because I was never that good at bass. But... And I came back later on to introduce them, so that's how I got back in.
That is the greatest reason for leaving a band, because he wouldn't give me a lift back from Muswell.
Perfect reason.
Yeah. It's better because, like, the pretentious... I bet when you were 16, you went, we were just pulling in different, like, directions musically.
Yeah, exactly.
But the real reason was Muswell Hill to Highgate.
Yeah, exactly.
So you
For the
take your
sake
10
of
minutes.
2 minutes. I mean, it's down the hill, and there you are, you know?
Imagine if, like now... You know, if Jim Moore, the head of Radio 2, was in today, and I said, "Gives a lift home," and he said, "No, that's screw you."
That's it. It's
That's
over.
it. I'm not working on your
me and the
stinking
corporation
station anymore.
Well, that's what we need. We need a bit of principle like that. It'd be good,
principle.
wouldn't
Well, not quite that.
That's what people should. They
Quite
should
as
say.
far as that.
Yeah, I think they should. They should have. Jack Straw has resigned from the cabinet today. He said Tony Blair wouldn't give him a lift home to Highgate.
Yeah, no, then.
That'd be all right.
If it was Jack Straw, yes. I like doing the shows here.
Jack Straw.
This is Tomorrow's Just Another Day. You can carry on your Jack Straw conversation off air, fellas.
Jack
All right?
Straw's Castle, though. What about Jack Straw's Castle, is it?
What we just heard was Tomorrow's Just Another Day from Madness, which is one of the highlights of the fantastic musical. I can't get enough of it. I've been to see it 3 times.
I know, that's so weird. You know what I did yesterday? I went along to see it just to make sure that I was up on all the tweaks that have been
Oh, you
been
should have
made.
called me. I would have come.
Yeah.
Because I want to go and see it again.
Do you?
Yeah, I would probably watch it every night.
It was a funny night last night. You know, the 2 black girls who I think are sensational.
Yeah.
You know, I think they get a lot of the good lines, you know. One of them hurt her foot in baggy trousers, in that baggy trouser scene. Because I noticed her hobbling in the next scene, you know, the car wash scene. Where and I thought, she's done her foot in, you know. Anyway, next thing, she was replaced by the one who plays Mr. Pressman's secretary.
Right.
And the understudy was...
During the show?
During the show, yeah.
Excitement of theatre, darling.
It was all happening. There was like 4 understudies replacing people who were ill and, you know.
Because the bloke who plays the dad, let's not go into too much detail,
Yeah.
I went to see it one night and he cut his finger off or something.
Had he?
Ridiculous.
I haven't heard that. I'll tell you what I heard last night. I heard there was... I heard that some kid got so carried away a couple of weeks ago, he jumped up on stage and started dancing with the crowd.
I hope it was at the end.
I presume it was.
It's terrible during like one of the love scenes.
No, that wouldn't work, would it?
No.
Or
the return of
So
the
is that
Lost
all right?
Farmer's
Is it sort of
Assembly.
gig atmosphere there? People go down the front and jump about?
Not
Well, it's
enough,
not like
I
a
think.
gig atmosphere because it is theatre. There is a good story, you know, coupled with the songs, you know. So, I mean, I'm watching the audience a lot, and they're just sitting there watching. Then the number ends, and it's like applause, you know.
Yeah.
It's
All
not
right.
like a gig where you stand up and dance.
There should be
along.
more of that with the theatre, like for King Lear and stuff. People should all rush down the front and dive about. He's doing the eyes.
But I think there are those shows that are sort of, I can't remember any of the names of them, that are sort of, you know, this is a tribute to the disco hits of the 70s where people treat it more as a...
Well, Shane Ritchie did
a dance show.
because we went up when we first had the idea of pushing this musical.
Yeah.
Me and Suggs went up to see one of his works in Blackpool. I think we lasted about 20 minutes. I thought, this is it. This is a doddle off to the bar, you know, because we couldn't stomach anymore. But no offence, Shane. But yeah, strange, very 70s
And
orientated.
that offence was ringing untrue around the
yeah,
studio.
it was, wasn't it? Bashed me in the head again, back of the head. Oh dear.
The boomerang, no
The
offence.
sincerity of
Smash.
showbiz, darling. No, he was fantastic. No, that was interesting, yeah.
See, I a couple of years ago when Chaz was talking about it, and I assumed it was some sort of biopic version of the Madness story.
Yeah.
And I quite foolishly begged him that if I could play him.
Yeah.
But then I said, because you ain't got much of a voice, have you?
No,
and I can. No, not you. Sorry, Suggs. And so I was saying to Suggs, I can sing as well as you. That wouldn't hurt, would
Well,
it?
you can actually, because obviously we've shared the stage on the old jury tributes.
Of course we have.
The
I've forgotten about that.
And I must say, you do very well. Actually, I'm quite impressed. Yeah.
But I think I lost my chance to play a part that didn't exist in the first place anyway by demeaning Suggs, who sold it out. God knows how many records you lot have sold, and I'm saying I don't sing as well as you.
Do you know, we've never counted it up. Should do, I suppose.
I think there are people that do that.
Do you know what? I'm more interested. I said to our manager, take pictures of the audience this time round. On this tour, we must take pictures of the audience, because I just think they are a phenomenon. It's just very strange.
It's a good thing to do
we
for a
haven't got
band.
a record deal. Do you know what I mean? It's nearly 24 years later since we first got together.
So you're selling more tickets now than you would have done in the 80s, or as many tickets? Because would you have
Probably
played the
more.
arena?
I don't know. I mean, we're doing
it wasn't
bigger.
about it, but-
When we reformed, we actually came back bigger than we left in a weird way. So I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the affection of the public or our fans or.
We missed you. I mean, I think a lot of it is that. I mean, they were, you do your Christmas shows or your Finsbury Park shows or whatever, and they are going to be big events. I mean, how many tickets did you sell for London Arena? Like
12,500, 25,000 over 2 days.
God, that's incredible, isn't it?
It is weird. I mean, when we came back, we did 72,000 over 2 days. So it's very strange. It is really weird. I mean, long may it continue. I don't understand it. I mean, that show you saw, I mean, I think I like to think we're trying to become the working man's Floyd, therapy for the masses. So I think we've got to add value. I mean, I have to say, got to do some new material, But you add to it cautiously.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second. I wanted to play, and this will link into it. So the kids from the show were backstage afterwards, and I was chatting to them, and I was so excited. Because I'm a stage door Johnny.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you play the... And anyway, they were saying to me, who is this Prince Buster?
Right.
And of course, I got my pipe out, sat in a big high-back chair, got a glass of port and explained to them
held forth
the history. Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing that would delight me more.
He's just been signed to Trojan.
Really?
Yeah, about a month ago, yeah.
Well, anyway, I want to play a track by Prince Buster in case any of the kids from the show, I like to call them that now, are listening. And this actually probably isn't particularly representative, but it's a fine track. It's called It's Burke's Law. That was It's Burke's Law from Prince Buster's fabulous Greatest Hits, which has just been reissued with a couple of extra tracks. And it's, if you're a Scar fan, it's certainly a must-have. It's got Al Capone on and Ten Commandments. From Man to Woman and Ghost Dance and Judge Dredd and
Ten Commandments, what an un-PC song.
A lot of the stuff. There's also a version called Ten Commandments from Woman to Man,
yeah,
which he also produced, which is her getting her own back and saying, no, you must not. Basically saying you must not hit me again, which is, I suppose, was his way of thinking, I'll give something back to the ladies.
Well, I'm writing a musical and one of the songs is going to be, at least he doesn't hit me, He goes out every night, he gets drunk and in a fight, but at least he doesn't hit me.
Oh, that's very musical.
Yeah.
And musical. Now, watching the Our House show, it was really astonishing. A lot of those songs, some that I hadn't particularly enjoyed before, I thought these are like written for a musical. They're all very self-contained. Someone buys a car. I've been driving in my car, and there are a lot of songs that you think, I didn't.
Yeah. Was it a 20-year-long plot?
It does feel like it. You watch the thing and you think this was all written for exactly. There's a love song.
Really well, don't they? They do fit. I mean, there's that prison scene. Home, I mean, honestly, it makes me well up. It really makes me well, Very, very strange.
I do well up to It Must Be Love. 3 times I've seen it. I've sat there.
It's so bizarre,
and it's so corny, but I'm in a musical and there's a love scene going on and they're singing It Must Be Love to each other. Oh.
I mean, that is one of the great moments when you perform that live, the vibes that, go out to the audience, I mean, you see all these geezers going home, ooh, it must be love, cuddling their babies and therapy for the masses.
Working Man's Floyd.
Absolutely.
You're like the new Orwell. Suddenly.
Working Man's Dostoevsky.
Crime and Punishment. Ooh, dark.
A night boat of the Brothers Karamazov.
Yeah, exactly.
Still to come in the next couple of hours, Paul Simenon will be in, another bass player, friend of
what
Matt,
a shame,
will be in very, very shortly. Yeah. And later on in the show, Dale Winton. But for now, 88 to 91 FM, this is Radio 2 from the BBC. That's presumably you're not really on that one.
I'm going...
Oh, okay. Pepping.
Pepping, is that pepping?
Yeah. I'm Mark Lamarr. I'll sit in for Jonathan Ross for the next couple of hours and next week. And Mark Steele's still with me, as is Jazz Smash. Later on in the show, Paul Simenon, as I said, and Dale Winton. What we just heard there was one of the great dance tunes of all time.
How very kind of you.
It was. There were certain songs. "Groove Is in the Heart" by Delight's one of them.
What a track!
You know, you put it on anything by James Brown.
Yeah,
but there were songs that if I wasn't sat down now and at work,
you'd be up.
I would be. No, well, I'd be nodding. I'd be
course.
pretending I was about to
older.
dance.
Well, when you're old, you stand at the back of the gig nodding, don't you?
Yeah, I did.
Certain songs that identify a generation dance-wise, and I remember there's a great scene in Quadrophenia where everyone's sat around a bit bored at a party, and then My Generation comes on, and suddenly it's like, and I remember thinking at the time when I was watching that, thinking, oh, right, so that was their version of Pretty Vacant. That's what it was for me. Pretty Vacant to come on, everyone, wow! And then in the early 80s, it was Night Boat to Cairo, definitely.
Old Lee Mavers of the Lamarrs, he'd always wax lyrical about, the roots, mate, the roots of rock, like, there's these roots and there's like James Brown's in it.
Right, let's play. I've got some Lars here, actually. Did you sign them? What do you mean with one? I did one album.
I didn't sign them, no. I think I was employed, really, by Andy McDonald, whose label it was.
Chaz worked at Godis, by the way, we should point out.
To really get them out, to get the album out. They recorded it 4 or 5 times, and they were always unhappy with each version. And Lee always wanted to put out the demo, which sounded terrible. I took him along to see Townsend, and who was a big hero of his. And Townsend listened to the album, he listened to the demo album, which was all crackly and hiss on a tape. And Lee was going, "That's the one, mate, that's the one on this cassette, like." And Townsend went, "Well, if you think that's the one, press up a couple of 100,000, go and sell it on the street." But quite frankly, the one you recorded is the Dogs,
Yeah.
See, Lee Mavers had this sort of opinion that, it has to be done on a 2-track for authenticity. And Townsend's going, "No, mate, the minute we got a 2-track, we bought 2 and stuck them together. We wanted 24, so... Anyway.
But then again, listen to the stuff they did on 24 tracks and listen to the stuff they did on 4 tracks.
True. No, it's a difficult... Well, analogue. Analogue is king, surely. Always will be, won't it?
I bet. Am I talking to Lee Mavers here?
No, sorry. That's it, proximity.
How long were you there at Godis? You worked alongside...
3 years.
Phil Jupiter's worked there,
Phil Jupiter's, yeah. He was there really before me, but he was still involved in...
What was he doing there?
I think he was A&R beforehand. I mean, he was before I was there. I came, he'd left, but he was still involved in Bragg's career. I mean, I think he did Sexuality, he directed that video.
That's right, yeah.
Which he did a great job on. So
he
was
did,
always,
it's a very good video.
Godis was very much a family sort of vibe. So if you weren't actually literally there physically, you were still involved in some way.
If there's one of those I Love the 80s, I Remember Just Now programmes on, look out for Happy Hour by the House Martins, where Phil is sat slovenly drinking in the pub.
Oh, in that video, famous video.
Yeah, and in fact, next time you see it, you go, "Oh God, this is Phil," because it's quite a pivotal scene in a way.
He's come on leaps and bounds since those days. He was quite.
He used to just sit there and drink in pops.
He'd be very anxious. I think he's lost that anxiety, which is really nice.
Well, you get older.
You get older. Yeah, more exactly.
So did you sign one of my favourite ever bands, The Stairs?
Yeah.
You know what? I so wish I'd brought it in, but there's a group called The Stairs who had one album out, and they were just a phenomenon. And I really think it's the most played album I've ever owned.
Really?
In my CD player downstairs in my living room, I don't really listen to music.
Yeah.
It's nestled in there, and it's been in there for about 2 years.
Sweet Thing, what a track!
It's incredible. I'm really now I'm gutted. But next week I'll play it because I literally listen to it every day.
I went up to Liverpool and I saw 6 bands in a row, and they were one of the bands. And there was an EP, and I just loved it. It was a Weed Bus. Which I directed the video for, and I haven't even got a copy of the video, and I love it, But Sweet Thing, I think, it's just such a classic.
I think I've got myself. Yeah,
$3,000. I did everything on that vid.
They're a really phenomenal band, but as were the Lars, which I have got with me. So let's have a listen to that. This is called Way Out. That was the Lars with Way Out, and whenever I speak to people about this album, they always say, "Oh yeah, the Lars, there she goes," and that's it. And there's only 12 tracks, and pretty much that's all they ever released, isn't it? Yeah. But it's a phenomenal album. It is one of the great albums of that period.
They were so reluctant to, have a career in a way. They were great live.
The sales are on there. You can probably get it for 4 for 20 quid or something at the moment, and I don't know either. I'm theorising.
Free-forming.
I'm just saying to people,
it's definitely worth it.
Got the album, go and
Absolutely.
get it. And
improvised advertising. That's a cult genre.
Soft advertising.
This may or may not be about. I don't know what the price is, but
it's
where you can get it.
It's definitely about.
It's definitely an album you should own.
If you go into a record shop, and I'm not plugging any particular ones, I'm just plugging record shops.
Yeah.
So that's a nice advert. Go out and buy some records.
Have some sanity and go out and get the record.
Yeah, maybe not today. Today will be horrific.
Today?
No, high streets all over England are going to be...
Go to Beano's in Croydon. There's no other reason in
Beano's
this world to go to Croydon but except for Beano's record store.
Well, they might.
Is that where you are?
They will have that. They will have that.
Right, the argument at the moment is what shops will be stocking the last album.
They will have that.
Have we gone on a tangent it's a cul-de-sac, this tangent, isn't it?
I think it probably is. I wanted
been up
to...
a few of them today.
There's been... that's what we do. Sometimes we notice before we get to the cul-de-sac, and other times we need...
don't go up there.
We need
Other
people
times
to
go,
say...
no, it'll be all right.
We need
There'll be an
people to
alley at
say...
the top.
No, there's nothing. You can't get out this way. And I'm glad you were here for that. There's been a rumour on the internet... that and often these things aren't true, but that you're going to sign with Trojan and release an album which goes back to your ska roots.
Well, I talked to you recently about the concept of the ska bar.
Yes.
Well, I had a meeting about it, and one of the people was John Reid from Trojan, and he was telling me that Prince Buster had just signed, and I said to the others in the band, it might be an interesting idea to do an album of ska covers, So we're thinking about it, but we're also thinking about writing new songs. I mean, who knows? I mean, the thing with Madness is, I often say, when the planets are in alignment, the country needs cheering up and the milk bills come in, we tend to do something. But it's very difficult, 7 people, 21 decisions.
Is it as mercenary as that? Because it's always so joyful. I've seen you live many times.
But I mean, the mercenary thing comes afterwards. It's just the reward, But I mean, I think the thing about Madness is, no, the money really doesn't come into it. It really doesn't. I mean, it does afterwards when you go, how much do we earn? But I mean, obviously it's a concern. But now the main thing with the band, I mean, we've blocked one tour because Lee wasn't in the mood. So you sort of go, okay, he's not in the mood. That's a good reason for not working.
Yeah.
But that's how we operate. And when it comes to new material, if there's enough songs that the band like and want to record and play, then we'll do something. But if there isn't, then we don't. So there's an unsort of said. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. What's the word? Process of quality control.
I mean, obviously, at the gigs you did recently all around the country, you were playing mostly old stuff.
Yeah.
Is that frustrating or is that fine?
As a songwriter, it's a bit frustrating. I mean, there's 3 newish songs. When I say new, they're 3 years old. But we were tempted to play one of the songs from the musical. But for the kind of thing we're doing, we sort of think, well, the audience want to hear songs they know. They want to have, we want them going out, on a high, really. So it's difficult, yeah.
But there was always, and I didn't notice this, I think until watching the musical and then going out and buying the greatest hits, I had the albums on vinyl and stuff.
Yeah.
But I thought, I like listening to all those in a row. And I never at the time realised what a very strange and adventurous career path Madness had. Because suddenly there's you're in the middle of these sort of fun-loving hits, and then there's an instrumental, Los Palmas 7, which was a very bizarre move. And then there's, Grey Day or Embarrassment or whatever, which were quite a big jump from One Step Beyond or Prince or whatever.
Well, I think, in the early days, we started out learning our instruments with 12-bar stuff, like I'm Walking, Fats Domino, stuff like that. So ska really was something that we were au fait with from the youth clubs, and it was an easy medium to play, easy, so we learnt to play our instruments with ska and R&B, early R&B. But then when we realised we could actually write, and that sort of started up, then that's when we think moved more into that sort of British pop vein, But we did release some
at the time when you were releasing
things.
stuff like Los Palmas 7 is a particularly interesting one, releasing an instrumental. Did you think, oh God, this is risky?
No, we just thought we fancied doing it.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're a real crest of a wave then as well.
We were on a crest of a wave. I doubt we could have. That wouldn't have been a hit if you'd come out with it, first. I doubt it. No, we were on a wave then. But what was I going to say? Something dull, probably. Anyway,
a lot of the slow stuff, like the Arlington House song and stuff like that, is like quite a departure, isn't it, from the thing people. I'm sure there's a lot of people who know Madness.
As, Arlington. One Better Day.
Oh, right, One Better Day.
Yeah.
I mean, that was about things that we were, concerned about. There was talk at the time of Arlington House closing down. For those who don't know, Arlington House is basically a DOS house in Camden. A very fine and large DOS house. But, we were concerned that it was being shut down, and we wrote a song about it. I mean,
When that film Arlington Road came out, weren't you disappointed? I was. I
was disappointed with the film. I like his work, the lead, what's his name, old Susan Sarandon's geezer. But,
Yeah, what was his name? Anyway, let's play a track from. Now you can tell me a bit about this band, Border Crossing. They're signed to your label, so you must know something about them.
Yes, it's going to be probably out around March. It's a guy called Shurus Graham, and it's a bit of a collective. He's brought a lot of people together, you know.
Okay, I have no idea what this track's called because I've only got like a...
Yeah, it's top secret.
It's
top secret.
It sounds like it's either Barrington Levy on it or someone doing a very good Barrington Levy, and this is Border Crossing with a song whose title I know not.
Okay.
One thing we must all make sure of, that in the next half hour or so, we don't get too mournful, because I'm sure everyone listening to this show has been affected this week by what happened on Sunday. Has been mournful, but I think today, and I've planned this, and I want it to be a celebration of a great man's life.
Yeah.
When I heard the news on Monday morning, the first thing I did was wanted to listen to this, and you'll see. The Clash with London Calling from the album of the same name. I'm sure you'll all be aware, and I'm sure everyone who listens to this show will be of an age that can have thought about it this week and let it sink in, of the incredibly sad passing of Joe Strummer last week. And like I said, I don't want this to be too mournful, because we all knew him a little, and Paul Simenon's in at the moment, and obviously knew him a lot better than any of us. But I think all of us discussing him during the records and stuff have just thought, what a great bloke, and wasn't it fantastic that he was around in the first place? And always so positive. The few times I met him, he was always excited about something. And Paul, do you I don't know if you remember the first time you ever met him?
I do very clearly. I mean, I'd seen him around, wandering the London streets, and obviously saw him when he supported the Pistols at I think it was in Nashville, and but the first time I got in close contact was at the Lisson Grove Labour Exchange, the Dole office, and he was in one queue and me and Mick were in the other, and he could tell that we were sort of eyeing him up, sort of, because obviously we recognised him. He was nervous, we were nervous because it was Joe Strummer, because he was 101ers were quite a... Well, he was an exciting member of the band, whereas the other guys didn't really come to the fore. But the real meeting, which is often been claimed to be a myth, but the reality is it did happen in Goulburn Road, is when we met Joe, and I was with Mick, and Mick said, you know, you're great, but your group is shit. So that was our first meeting, and then the next meeting after that was when Bernie Rhodes had given Joe an ultimatum of, you've got 24 hours to decide if you want to join this new group or that's it. And then 12 hours later, Bernie said, time's up, forget the 24, and Joe said, I'm in. And
it's the ultimate punk story, meeting in the Dole office.
It's fantastic.
And
so was he
worried about a punch-up?
Things like
they were
that
already doing
those days, though, didn't
well,
they?
they did, yeah.
They were already doing lots of gigs at that time. Then,
well,
so
I mean,
lucky
I'd seen two. One was at the Nashville, as I said, and the other was at the place called the Red Cow that used to be in Hammersmith, which was quite a strange environment because, well, maybe it's the particular show, that there were sort of hippies lumbering around and sort of stray dogs wandering around and up on the stage, and then in the middle was this guy wearing a suit thrashing away at his guitar, which obviously was Joe. So that's probably twice that I saw Joe play.
And how does it work? I mean, there must be a worry when to get someone into a band. Obviously, there's a talent, but there's also a getting on part of it. And didn't you? I mean, you and Mick knew each other before, didn't you? Sort of worry, I don't like this bloke.
Well, me and Mick had been working together for quite a while, you see, and under the guise and the steady hand of Bernard Rhodes, who played a very important part in the Clash. I mean, we'd been trying out singers and stuff, and so, you know, we saw Joe, and I don't know, I suppose there's a certain affinity of spirit there. I mean, the first time we rehearsed was probably a room the size of a toilet, and so there wasn't really much room to move, but I think Joe was probably impressed by my... the fact is, I wasn't quite a capable musician at that time, so I did tend to sort of jump around, even though we was in this tiny room. So I think that enthusiasm encouraged Joe.
You're so the opposite of him. He left the band playing bass because someone wouldn't give him a lift home.
Well, that's fair enough.
And there's he's jumping about in a toilet-sized room.
I couldn't jump around because my bastard put stickers underneath each fret saying A, B, C.
Yeah, well, that's what I
did. You have?
Yeah, well, that's...
It's a funny old world,
That's
isn't
what Mick Jones calls the school, Paul Simenon School of Music, but I'm really pleased that you did it as well.
I think it's funny, though. I think there must be some sort of psychological, subconscious attraction Do you know what I mean? In the formation of bands, do you know what I mean? What draws you together? You must recognise something.
Well, that's it. I mean, I suppose. Well, I mean, this is where Bernie's important because like Bernie was like responsible first of all for getting John Rotten into the Pistols.
Yeah.
In the same way that Bernard was important in telling Mick to get rid of London SS and get a new group with a non-musician, myself. And also came up with the idea of Joe Strummer.
Plus, he was involved in the specials as well, wasn't he?
That's it, yeah.
I mean, it's funny how... I mean, I'm only going by reputation. I think I've only met him twice, but it's funny how some people who are not particularly loved, do you know what I mean, as people, or not particularly nice as people, have made such, a mark on, music history. It's funny.
And what time was this then, Paul? This was before there would be any term known as punk then?
Yeah, this would be 76. Really, 76 is probably the point.
It's weird when people look back on that period and they always do the we saw the Pistols and the next day decided to form a band. But I think Joe's band are very underrated, and I think even he, in a little way, sort of went, I was doing this thing and it wasn't that exciting. But they were a very good band, the 101ers, and I want to play a track.
The 101ers were fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think sorry, Mark, I know you're about to spin the record.
That's all right. I don't have to spin it anymore, it's just okay. So it's fine.
Yeah. Times have changed, but since I was in the radio station. But no, I think what is sort of important is really Bernard was important in crafting a vision for all of us within the group. And what was great is that the 101ers were sort of quite a folky type group, but with the edge of rock and roll.
Yeah.
And what was great is that when Bernard, in the middle of all our political discussions that we used to have before rehearsal, Bernard would stress right about what affects you. And of course Joe did that miraculously, as we'll find, as we all know.
This has actually been Elvis Costello once claimed this is one of his favourite tracks of all time. This is the 101ers with Keys to Your Heart. The 101ers with Keys to Your Heart from, I'm guessing, 76, probably that record, 77? 76 would be, wouldn't it? Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. And not a million miles removed from the Clash, in a way. I mean, with the different arrangement, that could easily have been a Clash song.
That's it, and as I said, I suppose with a change of lyrics, with the new attitude, it could easily have been a Clash song.
But it certainly had the vocal energy that you'd associate.
Well, actually, we did
Strummer.
cover it at a certain period in the beginning, because we needed to build up a repertoire of songs, obviously, and that being one of them, along with Board with the USA and various other little ditties.
I watched on Monday, because I think a lot of people had a Strummer day, as it were, and the first thing I did was put on The West Way to the World, which is a fantastic documentary, and again, go out and buy it today, or a day of your choosing. It's a really, really well done and very sensitive documentary of the Clash's career. And right from the off, it did seem that Joe came in and just brimming with ideas. There's that story that Mick tells about doing I'm So Bored of You.
That's it, yeah.
And Joe changing it.
Yeah, well, this is the thing is, when, as I said already, that there was this these discussions that we used to have, which is sort of quite amusing in a way, because Bernie would throw in, right, if you had £1,000, what would you do? And of course, unfortunately for Terry Chimes, he said, I'd buy a Lamborghini, whereas me and Joe and Mick were sort of, well, actually, we'd like to do this or whatever. I don't know, it's sort of open discussion. And I just think
that's so not a Clash statement, is it? I'd buy a Lamborghini.
That's it. But the thing is, I think Joe being a master of words, I think, obviously Mick said, well, I've got this tune called I'm So Bored With You. And Joe just tagged it on. So that was Joe's creative power.
I mean, was it always like that? Whenever I've met him, he's always seemed to be brimming with ideas and enthusiasm, and I'm sure a lot of them didn't work out and whatever, but was he always that bundle of energy?
Yeah, enthusiasm all the time. I mean, it's, there's so many people that have had moments with him. I mean, what's fantastic about Joe is had this quality where if he gave you his time, he could make you feel really special and important. And that's a really great quality to have, to put that attention on somebody.
I think the only person I ever met that I remember, and I won't go into it now, I remember the first and last things he ever said to me, because they were just... They were very important and beautiful things to say to someone. Yeah. And it would be self-serving to tell him now, but that's quite an amazing thing for anyone, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But also he had this quite interesting quality of. He used to spend these holidays down in Spain, and he used to gather an amount of people, and they used to just follow him anywhere, to any bar. He'd say, "I've got an idea, let's go to this bar." And the Spanish friend told me that on one occasion there was a guy on the beach in swimming trunks and flip-flops and a towel, and somehow he got pulled into this. We'll go to this bar. Well, by about 5 hours later, in the dead of night, they were still going from bar to bar. By this time, the flip-flop had broken. The guy was still in these trunks, and they were about like 50 miles away from where they first picked him up. So these things happen. People just follow Joe, and you know.
I was on at that the firefighters benefit that he. About 4 or 5 weeks ago in Acton Town Hall, and I was on there, and of course it was me personally, it was dreadful because it was comedy and Strummer just is not a good combination for all sorts of reasons that aren't important. But the thing that was amazing was backstage afterwards, and he's still in his underpants, getting it's a fantastic frenetic performance. And this flurry of people coming, and there's various firefighters and all sorts of fans and so on. And there must have been 20, 30 people probably in a room about the same size as the room you were talking about, the toilet.
Yeah.
And he was... not just was he all right with it, but he was just fantastic with it. And I know this, I can see how this can sound like, any famous person dying, and people going, "Oh, wasn't he a marvellous bloke?" But it was staggering. That's the time he had for everybody. And I thought, you see, when you see a politician trying so hard to look like, "Oh, I'm talking to people," and they just can't begin to understand why they can never accomplish it.
It's not natural.
Nobly. But it was Strummer. It was just you thought, no, you genuinely have an affection for everybody that was in that room. He had an affection for him. It was so
I do hope that no one thinks we're being disingenuous. I think everyone in this room was certainly touched by his life and his sort of outlook on things.
Well, I was
just about to tell people who was on the show.
Oh, yeah.
That's all because we haven't done it for quite a while. I'm Mark Lamarr, sitting for Jonathan Ross. Chaz Smash is still with us, Mark Steele and Paul Simenon, and we're
otherwise people think we're talking about the Queen Mother.
Sorry?
Otherwise people think we're talking about the Queen Mother.
Yeah, and there's nothing nice to say there. Well, let's just move on. Here's the BBC, after all. And we're discussing and celebrating the wonderful life of the sadly departed Joe Strummer. This is a track for you, Mark, because I know this is the one that meant Monday to you. This is Tommy Gunn. The Clash, of course, with Tommy Gunn. On Monday on the news, there have been precious little tributes this week, and I think that's mainly just because of the time of year that it happened, and I'm sure there will be more fulsome and thoughtful ones coming up. But one of the things that I thought was outstanding, not only that a lot of the big names said very nice things about Joe, and quite deservedly, was Mark Radcliffe was on the news saying, I don't know if he was talking personally about Joe, but he was talking mainly about the sort of state music's in at the moment and the state of the and of course there's always good music around, but he was talking about the state of the charts and what kids have to put up with and whatever. And he said, and if you want to know what things could have been like or what things should be like, you could do a lot worse than listen to the Clash. And I think that's a very accurate statement.
Yeah.
That a band came out with political angles as well as fine tunes. It's like you couldn't hope for more.
Yeah,
I was had to write me weekly column, this week, which I did about Joe, and I was sort of trying to put across in that sort of very ham-fisted way, but I was trying to say the impact of it, trying to think back the impact of it. I think it was that for our sort of generation, I was born 1960, then there'd been this long post-war stability. Everyone assumed that it was going to stay that way. Every year there was a new gadget, a vacuum cleaner, a fridge or whatever. And the attitude to our generation... Then in the mid-1970s, it all crashed. All that went wrong and it was back to mass unemployment. For my generation, it felt like the older generation was blaming us. It was all that you've got the opportunities we never had, we fought a war for you, all that sort of thing. And there was a big social polarisation. A lot of people blamed immigration and so on, the rise of the National Front.
Still goes on.
And there was no one to turn to. The Labour Party was Callaghan, and then you said, we're hardly going to stick posters of Jim Callaghan on your wall, or Leonid Brezhnev, you're going to have him. And so there was no one to turn to. And the impact of the Clash album, I think, I don't think you can understand it without knowing that there was that social background. And I know myself, I got that album... Never heard, never seen the 101. Bought that album, especially in this little small town that I was from. I mean, I know you're Swindon, but this was small town.
He always tries to trump me on that his town is.
No, I get this joke I've been saying about it's going up to someone from Swanley and saying, "Oh, I'm from a small town as well, so I know what you feel like." That's like going up to Nelson Mandela and saying, "I've had hassle from the old Bill myself, so I know how you feel, mate." But put the Clash album on, and the first, even though I couldn't hear the words, the first 20 seconds of Janie Jones, I just thought, oh, we've got a voice, and I don't think anything has made such an impact. And I'm sure that I'm one of millions of people that must have been. It was like, yes, we've got Strummer, you've got David Owen, we're winning at last. You know, it was the impact of it was just fantastic.
The difficulty at the time was, which was probably quite frustrating for Joe, was because of his. He basically had. Well, it wasn't a tooth problem. It was just that they'd been neglected to the point where they sort of ended up like shark's teeth. So on the vocal delivery, it was sometimes a bit blunted, so you couldn't quite hear what was being said. I mean, we were talking earlier about Tommy Gunn. The amount of people that come up to me and said, Tommy Gunn, they initially thought it was Tommy's mum. She bakes cakes for everyone. And
again, missing the point of the Clash quite severely.
That's it.
But it wasn't Terry Chimes that said that, was it?
No, it's a baking song. I'll do a fudge one.
They've really changed, haven't they?
Yeah. So, that was interesting and possibly frustrating.
So bored with self-righteous
after these amazing lyrics, that the vocal delivery is blunting their power. But, of course, people sort of do find out eventually. That's what was great about Rock the Casbah, because everybody was on the dance floor dancing disco style or whatever, and that's fine. And then later they would after the enthusiasm for the song, they'd say, well, actually, what is this song about? And then would read from there. So in some ways you got them that way, rather than just standing up and barking and preaching at people.
I've played up Tommy Gunn at least 100 million times in my life, and I still don't know the words to it, apart from "You Can Be
Tommy's
a Hero
mum.
in the Name of None."
Yeah, okay.
So I don't know, can you enlighten us on any
Well,
of
no, I think that's not really. I was going to say, just look it up. I'm sure you can.
Right.
He's hearing it from behind while he's concentrating on his.
That's it.
He's got an A and a B on his bass.
We're both being deafened by a mixed guitar, so.
Well, what do you think drove Joe? I mean, lately he's been doing his I suppose you'd sort of call it world music rock, and always everyone in the Clash always had that sort of magpie outlook to various musical forms.
It was all our musical backgrounds. I mean, it's like when I first met Joe, it's like he said, "Oh, come to my place and see these records I got." And I went to this squat, and we went in the basement, and there was like Bo Diddley album, there's like Ronnie Hawkins, Bob Dylan, all this sort of stuff. But what was frustrating is like there was the record player, but whenever you pick these records up, the record sleeve, there was actually no records in them. The records had gone. There was just covers. So for years we used to sort of, I mean, he was obviously fully aware of the music content, and me slightly about Bo Diddley, but generally I just had to spend ages sort of trying to imagine what these songs were like. But eventually we got there,
Let's hear a track from the first album. Do you want Janie Jones, Mark? We can have that. I was going to play White Riot, but I don't mind.
White Riot.
Yeah, okay, White Riot. Here we go.
Good.
Nah, there's a lyric you want to decipher. There's that one bit that I'm sure.
It's those teeth just snapping those lines out,
The thing is, as well, musically, the impact of that is you can only follow as well if you know the social background. That before that, it was like Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I mean, I was, when I was 15, went to see Genesis and stuff like this.
Long hair.
Yeah, and then a 25-minute super tramp, this sort of thing.
Yeah, yes.
And then suddenly,
Six Wives of Henry VIII, all that.
I was one of the great. I had this French teacher called Mr. Forrest, and the one thing he ever taught me, nothing about French, was I remember he came in. He was a good bloke, and he came in one day, and there was a kid there with a Yes album. And he went up the wall. He's come in, he said, "What you got that for?" "Oh, Yes, man, it's great." And Mr. Forrest just did the whole lesson about why Yes were nonsense, basically. But the one thing I remember him saying that was so brilliant, he said, the thing is, with you listen to any great music, whether it's the early Stones or Beatles or Beethoven or Mozart, and it sounds really simple, and you break it down, it's actually really complicated.
Yeah.
With Yes, it sounds really complicated, and you break it down, and it's utterly simple. And I think that's just it could apply to almost any culture.
I keep buying Fragile, a Yes album. There's one track, the first track's all right, and the rest I sort of think,
You keep buying it.
Well, no, once every 10 years you go, wasn't there something about that album I liked? And then I remember the first track's great and the rest of it's...
Do you have it on every format? Like CD...
I probably lost it again,
Oh, wax barrel.
You went through that phase, the covers were great, weren't they?
I don't know.
It was a phase.
I was sort of into my reggae. You see,
I really don't want to be
Two Sevens Clash.
And all that sort of stuff. Well, and pre that, Big Youth and stuff.
Except that was the cultural background. To
I understand. I just don't want to know how many copies of a particular Yes album Chaz has got today.
I'm probably exaggerating a tad.
Another day. No, you've got thousands. You've got thousands. You made it a hit. In the first place, you went out and bought them all.
There was a hippie phase, gong, It
was a very good point, though, because, again, watching West Way to the World the other day, and it was very interesting seeing how many political ideas and social statements that the band were bringing to what were, in essence, very simple 2-minute thrashy songs.
Yeah.
And I think that is a fascinating thing and something that I'm sure all of you brought to the band.
Well, it's... I suppose, first of all, you could say, the only music that really moved us at the time was sort of reggae, because that had, personal politics involved. And also, like I said, Bernard was sort of like the guiding light in the beginning. I think it's sort of things that moved you emotionally is an ingredient of writing songs. And obviously having something to say... is important.
Yeah, I last Friday, I don't claim to know Joe very well. I met him half a dozen, 10 times or whatever. Last Friday happened to be the first time I'd really spent some quality time with him, bizarrely enough. And we were drinking for 2 or 3 hours. And he was talking to me about, he'd been asked to write this song for next year. There's a celebration of Mandela's release, and there's going to be a gig on top of the Robben Island prison, which he was booked to play at. And he was saying that he'd been asked to write a song using Mandela's prison number in a 54, 46 type thing. Yeah. And he was so excited, and he was genuinely excited. He couldn't stop going about it. And he said, you know what? It makes it all worthwhile, that sort of thing. Yeah. And I thought, God, to a generation, you meant everything, and still do to that same generation. And for him to be still that positive and excited about doing very similar stuff to what he'd been doing his whole life was, I really thought, just a magnificent thing. I'm not saying this now. At the time, I thought, God, I'm so excited to see a man who's been around this long, who's done this much quality work.
You're talking about his interest, his passion. As you say, I didn't know him that well. I had a couple of conversations with him. The last one, which was the longest conversation I had at the Colony Rooms, funny enough. And the one thing I think about him, not knowing him that well, was that he was a real gentleman. Someone who made everyone around him feel comfortable, really engaging and really interested.
There was a great thing about. I saw him at the Floor early this year in Finsbury Park, and I thought what was brilliant about that, it was a great gig. They were great, but it wasn't just as a sort of retro 70s thing. It wasn't that at all. It was a great. They did some of the old Clash songs with a great deal of optimism in it, and he did one in particular about asylum seekers that he dedicated to some of the asylum seekers that have died trying to get over here. Right. And it was a tremendous optimism about it. And I thought, in some ways, well, that's what's brilliant about. It was so brilliant about him. It wasn't just being an icon to a generation, but that 25 years later, that haven't been the sort of easiest 25 years for sort of people who are against the mainstream, if you like. And the same amount of enthusiasm, and that is very.
I suspect that's why he was the icon to the generation, though, isn't it? Because there was...
But he didn't give it up.
Obviously, part of it, you should have the last word, but he obviously seemed to be exactly as genuine as everyone who listened to Clash records and said, oh, this band seemed to care. And often you hear that on records and it turns out the band don't, but he honestly did seem to be that human being.
Well, that was his nature, he was very caring to humans, to trees, to animals, just to life. It sounds sort of... a bit light-headed, but I think he was generally passionate about people and needed people. That's why he had that amazing capability. Whereas I sort of tend to sort of have a certain caution with people, whereas Joe would just jump in the middle and deal with actually anybody, which is great.
He was a great musical talent, but I think all of us here just want to remember what a fantastic bloke the geezer was.
Absolutely.
And he'll be sadly missed for that reason as much as anything else. 88 to 91 FM, this is Radio 2 from the BBC.